There is a quiet power within you that does not shout, does not strive, and does not wait for permission. It simply is. And when you touch it, when you rest in it, you discover a truth that rearranges your entire world. You already are the one you wish to be. Neville Goddard called this the act of assuming the wish fulfilled, a sacred move within consciousness, where you abandon the senses and step fully into the unseen, into the reality that only your imagination can reveal. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Not hope, not wanting, belief. This is not merely positive thinking. This is the sacred art of inner conviction, where you feel as though your desire has already been made manifest, where you occupy the state, emotionally and mentally, as if it were already yours. And the outer world, it bends, it obeys, it conforms, not because you forced it, but because you changed. Neville said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. This is not metaphor, it is law. You are not waiting for life to give you permission. You are not on trial with fate, you are the operant power. The imaginal act is the seed, and your assumption is the sun. It begins not with doing, but with being. A soft inward shift, a silent nod to the truth that I am is the beginning of all creation. So you close your eyes not to escape, but to return. Return to the place where the end has already unfolded, to the room that smells like your new home, to the voice that speaks your name with love, to the bank balance that no longer stirs anxiety, but security. You do not need to know how it comes. The how is not your concern. You need only be it, feel it, live from it, and the world like a mirror begins to shimmer with new reflection. Neville's formula was simple, but it demands courage. The courage to let go of the old self, to stop reacting to the evidence of the senses, and begin listening to the whispers of the soul. The senses will lie. They will point to lack, to distance, to delay. But the imagination tells another story. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is not blind, it is visionary. It sees what is not yet visible to the world, but fully known in spirit. So you assume that you are already the person you long to become, not in arrogance, but in sacred alignment. You walk differently. You speak with a certain softness, a quiet confidence. You are no longer the seeker, you are the one who has. And in this restful knowing, you dissolve time. Manifestation is not about chasing or striving, it is about inner occupancy. Neville called it living in the end, and to live in the end is to emotionally dwell in the reality of your fulfilled desire. Not someday, but now. You imagine what it would feel like if it were true, and then you feel it. You don't imagine to make it happen, you imagine because it has already happened. This is the essence of creative prayer, not begging, not bargaining, but communion with your higher self, with the divine imagination that speaks in images and feelings. Each night before sleep, Neville advised you replay the scene that implies your desire is fulfilled. You drift into sleep, not as the one who wants, but as the one who already has. And in that fertile state between waking and dreaming, you impress the subconscious. You plant the seed, and the subconscious, without fail, brings forth what is sown. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. So think deeply, feel richly, and above all assume, not just in words but in vibration, in stillness, in repetition. Each moment you return to the end, you collapse distance, you collapse doubt, you become the magnet for the unseen, and in perfect time the seen will follow. When you live from the end, your world no longer whispers uncertainty, it hums with inevitability. There is a quiet certainty in the one who assumes, not boastful, not loud, but unwavering. It is the kind of knowing that doesn't flinch when appearances contradict it, that doesn't tremble when the bank account dips or the phone doesn't ring, because the assumption already holds the end within it. It is done. This is why Neville taught that imagination is God in action, not a daydream, but a divine act of creation. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Stillness isn't inaction, it is receptivity. It is becoming a clear vessel for truth to reveal itself. And truth is simple. You are not waiting for the world to change. You are changing within, and the world has no choice but to follow. Do not be fooled by delay. It is not denial. The moment you dare to feel it real, to dwell in the state of your fulfilled wish, the process begins. Invisible at first, like a seed germinating in soil, but faithful, always faithful. Neville called this a law, the law of assumption, and like gravity, it does not sleep. You are always assuming. The question is, what are you assuming now? Every idle thought, every self-concept you rehearse, every I am you affirm, these are your assumption, and they become the structure of your world. So choose them carefully. Choose to dwell in the end. Choose the joy before the manifestation, the gratitude before the gift. That is the mark of a master, one who no longer lives from reaction, but from remembrance, remembrance of who they really are. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. This verse, like Neville's teaching, reveals that there is no gap between the prayer and the answer, except in the mind that doubts. Assuming the wish fulfilled is the release of doubt. It is to say, I trust the unseen more than the seen. I trust the feeling more than the facts, because facts change, but the feeling, when persistently held, remains the architect of change. Your world reshapes itself in response to your inner dominion, slowly at first, then all at once. And here is the gentle miracle. You do not need to strive or stress to make it happen. You need only relax into the state, to allow the feeling of the wish fulfilled to become your resting place. Like slipping into warm water, you surrender. You don't push it. You don't grab for it. You let it hold you. The feeling of your desired reality is your compass. When it fades, you don't panic. You return. You recalibrate. Again and again, as many times as it takes. Repetition is not failure. It is formation. Each time you re-enter the state, it strengthens. Each moment spent in the assumption chisels away at the old and reveals the new. It is like a sculptor, slowly revealing the form hidden within the marble. You don't need to rush. The image is already there. Your only task is to see it, to feel it, to know it as yours. Neville would say, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world respond. And you will. Not because you forced the outcome, but because you surrendered to it, because you became it. Let your inner speech reflect the end. Let your thoughts speak only of its truth. No more. What if it doesn't work? No more. How will it happen? Just the still voice within that says it is already done. And in this stillness, miracles are born. And so, you begin to notice something peculiar. The more you assume the wish fulfilled, the less urgency you feel. The grasping fades. The needing dissolves. Because the one who has does not beg. The one who knows they already are does not chase. There's a quiet power in the still assumption, a sacred confidence in your step. Even when your senses tell you otherwise, your soul whispers, I've already received it. To him who has, more will be given. Matthew 13:12. This is not favoritism. It is law. Consciousness always reflects the state it holds. When you feel rich in spirit, richness flows to you. When you feel love deeply, love finds its way to you. But you must feel it first. This is the difference between longing and living. Longing stares out the window, wishing for something to change. Living from the end draws the curtains and prepares the room for the blessing already on its way. Neville said to fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not simply to think about it before sleep, but to wrap yourself in it like a blanket. To let your last thought before drifting off be the sweet assurance that it is already done. You don't visualize to get something. You visualize because you know it's yours. Let the scene play out gently, as if recalling a memory. No tension, no effort, just ease. Perhaps you see yourself receiving the call, or embracing someone who congratulates you, or simply sitting in peace, knowing all is well. Feel the tones of reality, the weight of the phone in your hand, the texture of the clothes you wear, the light filtering through the room. These sensory impressions are the language of your subconscious. They're the keys that open the gates to manifestation. Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. This is not metaphor, it is instruction. Believe that you receive them now, not in some distant future, not when conditions are favorable. Now, because imagination is not bound by time. The moment you assume, the clock starts bending. Events begin to rearrange. People feel nudged. Circumstances soften. And what once seemed far away begins to move closer. Sometimes subtly, sometimes like a flood, but always in harmony with your inner conviction. You need not know how. The bridge of incidents will appear. Sometimes it will make perfect sense. Other times, it may seem unrelated, until you realize it was always leading you to the end. Your only job is to stay faithful to the assumption. Let doubts come and go, like waves that never disturb the ocean's depth. You are the ocean, not the wave. You are the eternal I am, the one who decides what is real. Neville often said, your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. And that's the beauty of this teaching. It frees you from the tyranny of appearances. It reminds you that truth begins within, not with proof, but with feeling. So practice gently. In quiet moments, ask yourself, not what do I want, but what would I feel if I already had it? And then feel it, sink into it. Let it wash over you like soft rain on thirsty soil. Your consciousness is the fertile ground. The assumption is the seed, and faith is the sunlight that brings it to bloom. Do not dig up the seed with doubt. Do not poke and prod, and ask if it's working. Simply trust, and in perfect time, which often feels sudden, it will be done. Not because you chased it, but because you became it. There's a sacred stillness in truly believing it is already done. Not a stillness of inaction, but one of deep, divine rest. The kind of rest spoken of in Hebrews 4:3. For we who have believed into that rest, this rest isn't laziness. It isn't denial. It's surrender to the truth that what you seek is already created in the unseen, waiting only for you to align and receive. To assume the wish fulfilled is to say amen before the evidence. It's to walk through life like someone who has already heard the good news, and others may not understand. They might look at your current situation and wonder why your eyes shine with certainty, why your steps are so sure, but you don't need them to see it, because you see it, with the inner eye, with the imagination sanctified by faith. And when doubt tries to creep in, as it will, return gently to the inner sanctuary. Don't wrestle with it. Don't argue with the old self. Just turn again to your new identity, the one who already is. You are not becoming, you are revealing. The tree is already inside the seed, the sculpture inside the stone. Your future is not out there lost in time. It's folded within you, waiting for you to embody it. Neville would often remind us that imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. And so if you find yourself entangled in the how and the when, pause. Come back to imagination. Come back to the feeling. Return to the inner scene, and play it again, not from lack, not from fear, but from love, from knowing, from resting in the beauty of what's already yours. Call those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. This is not a trick of the mind. It's not wishful thinking. It is the way God creates, and you, made in His image, create the same way, by calling, by naming, by claiming. When you say, I am wealthy, or I am healed, or I am loved, you are not describing what is, you are declaring what must become. And if your heart whispers, but I don't see it yet, bless that voice and let it pass. You don't need sight, you need vision, the kind of vision that whispers in the night, that dances in the silence, that paints its truth across your soul, until it feels more real than anything your eyes can show you. This is the secret to collapsing time. It's not speed, it's not force, it's alignment. The moment you live from the end, you remove the distance. You no longer push what you want away with someday. You anchor it in the now, because now is the only moment that ever exists in truth. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Substance, evidence, real. Faith is not empty. It's substance, it's presence. And when you feel the wish fulfilled, you are laying hold of that substance. You are becoming the evidence. You begin to speak differently. You walk with a new rhythm. You make choices that reflect the inner change, even when no one else understands. And slowly the world outside begins to catch up. The faces change. The conversations shift. The emails come. The chance encounters that were never chance at all. The bridge of incidents, so masterfully arranged, carries you forward as if by grace. You'll look back and smile at how everything lined up. But even more powerful, you'll look inward and feel the peace of one who never doubted it would. Because you assumed, you moved in, you made your home in the end, and now the end begins to bloom around you. Not with noise but with beauty, not with effort but with inevitability. What the world calls delay is often just grace preparing the way, a gentle rearrangement, a divine choreography. The unseen hands of providence aligning details too intricate for the logical mind to comprehend. And in that sacred space between the assumption and its materialization, what Neville called the bridge of incidents, you are asked to do only one thing: remain faithful. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for He is faithful that promised. Hebrews 10:23. You don't need to check if it's working. You don't need to measure its progress. You don't need to dig up the seed to see if it's growing. You need only to rest in the knowing, the calm, anchored knowing that it is done. Assumption, when done rightly, becomes your new home. You dwell in it. You think from it. You sleep and wake and breathe from that fulfilled place. It colors your speech, your posture, your silence. There is no more begging, no pleading, no bargaining with God, only gratitude, because the wish has already been granted. And if you find yourself pulled back into the senses, into the illusion that nothing has changed, return again to your inner sanctuary, gently, without resistance. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine not to escape but to enter. You are not imagining for results. You are imagining because that is who you are now. The one who has, the one who is, the one who knows. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Mark 9:23. And this belief, it's not blind, it's not surface level hope, it is deep, rooted, lived. You begin to feel the shift, not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. The lens through which you see everything softens, warms, glows with new meaning. The cashier's smile feels like confirmation. The quiet moments in the morning shimmer with promise. It's subtle at first, but unmistakable. And soon you realize time has no bearing on your desire. It isn't far away anymore. It's here, nestled in your being, as present and as real as the breath moving through your chest. This is the mystery of Christ in you, the hope of glory. Neville said, "Dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part." And so you do, not with strain but with surrender, not with doubt but with delight. Each day becomes a living prayer, not a request but a recognition. You begin to see how effortless manifestation becomes when you stop trying to force it and instead embody it. Because you were never meant to chase after blessings like one starving for love. You were always meant to carry them inside, to release them through the purity of your assumption. The Father within you doeth the work, and that Father is your imagination, your awareness of being. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Stillness is the secret doorway. When you are still, you touch the eternal. When you are still, you hear the whisper of truth beneath all noise. And that whisper always says the same thing. You already are. You already have. There is nothing to fight for, nothing to prove, no mountain to climb, only a veil to lift, only a truth to remember. The moment you assume the wish fulfilled, you are no longer separate from it. You have bridged the gap. You have collapsed the time. You have become the thing you sought. And in that becoming, all else rearranges. The people, the conversations, the emails, the weather, the timing, all of it bends to meet your inner reality. Because you are not here to react to the world. You are here to create it. And so you close your eyes once more, not to escape this moment, but to deepen it, to water the roots of your desire, to live again in the scene that makes your heart flutter and your breath slow. You smile not because of what you see, but because of what you know. And in that knowing, all things are added unto you. And as you rest in that knowing, you begin to see something remarkable. You no longer reach for signs. You no longer demand reassurance, because the feeling itself is the evidence. The inner sensation, that peace that settles quietly in your chest, that gentle warmth behind the ribs, that is your sign. That is the birth of the unseen made real. You've stepped into the state, and from that state all things unfold. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is not a leap into darkness, but a resting in the light within. It is a still, unwavering trust in the unseen structure behind all form. Faith is the silent song of one who already possesses what they once only dreamed of. And the more you walk in this faith, the less you need to force. Desires that once made your heart race now make it steady, not because you want them less, but because you've already received them. In consciousness first, you begin to smile at delays, because they're no longer delays, they're part of the choreography, the beautiful and strange unfolding that brings all things to you in the most perfect way. You don't panic when the old world reflects the past. You don't flinch when a shadow of the old state appears, because you know it's only momentum. It's just yesterday's echo fading into silence. And so you return to the scene, to the feeling, to that sacred moment imagined just before sleep, the one that feels so good, so right, so done. It may be a phone call congratulating you. It may be a whisper from someone you love. It may be the weight of a key in your palm, or the quiet joy of holding hands in the sunlight. Whatever it is, it's yours, not someday, now. You repeat it not out of desperation, but out of love. You rehearse the feeling, not to bring it faster, but because it feels like home. And the more you dwell there, the more real it becomes, until the outer world, like a faithful servant, simply follows. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Psalm 37:4. And who is the Lord if not your I am? That sacred awareness within you that declares, I am successful, I am loved, I am whole, not I will be, but I am. This is not blasphemy. This is truth. You are not separate from the creative power of the universe. You are its expression, a spark of the divine with the power to assume, and in assuming to become. So you choose again, tonight, not just with thought but with feeling. You wrap yourself in the emotional texture of the wish fulfilled. You hear the words as if spoken directly to you. You see the scene not as a dream but as a memory, and you let it play. No striving, no doubting, no needing, just surrender, a soft smile, a deep exhale, and the peace of one who knows the truth, that you are never waiting for it to come. You are only waking up to the fact that it was always yours. You move through the world with new eyes now, not the eyes of longing but of knowing. Not searching for confirmation in every corner, but smiling quietly because you already carry the truth within. Every ordinary thing begins to feel enchanted. Even the silence speaks to you now. You sit at the table and your heart whispers it's done. You walk down the street and your breath says I have it. And though nothing has shifted yet in the outer world, you feel the inner world rearranging itself with gentle, perfect precision. Because when you assume the wish fulfilled, reality doesn't resist, it responds. The old you might have chased, might have begged, might have waited. But now you create, you become. You understand what Neville meant when he said, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment. It's not a matter of effort, but of embodiment. Not action, but alignment. Because from the state of the wish fulfilled, action arises naturally, joyfully. You are no longer acting for the desire, you are acting from the desire already fulfilled. Let the weak say I am strong. Joel 3:10. Not let the weak become strong, but say, declare I am, even when the senses deny it. Especially then, because your word is a seed, and your imagination is the soil. This is the creative act, not just visualizing something out there, but internalizing it, living from it, sleeping in it, breathing it in and out like prayer. You remember that feeling. You return to it like one returns to a sacred temple, not to plead, but to dwell, not to ask, but to thank. And in that silent sanctuary of your inner being, you begin to feel what it's like to have it. Not in the future, not someday, but now. It's quiet, this realization, but profound. You aren't waiting on God. You are the operant power. You are the one who moves in imagination, and what you imagine becomes. This is not arrogance, it is divine inheritance. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Be still, not busy, not striving, not doubting, but still, still enough to know that the power you seek is not outside but within. Still enough to feel the reality of the unseen world, and to know it is more real than anything the senses could offer. And from that stillness, things begin to happen. You don't chase signs, they find you. You don't force results, they unfold. People show up, doors open, opportunities arrive without the anxious need to make them. And even if nothing changes yet, you remain unmoved. Because you're no longer trying to manifest, you are already living it. There is no waiting, there is only being. You walk through your day as one who has already received. You speak gently, act mindfully, rest confidently, and every moment becomes a reflection of the inner world you've chosen. You're not pretending. You're remembering who you really are. The I am, not the person begging the universe, but the soul who commands it with love, not by willpower but by awareness, by feeling the wish fulfilled again and again until the line between inner and outer vanishes, and your entire world bends to reflect the state you've chosen, not because you earned it, not because you worked harder, but because you dared to assume. And so you begin to see that the line between desire and fulfillment isn't drawn in time. It is drawn in consciousness. Desire only feels distant when you separate yourself from it in thought. But the moment you return to it in feeling, gently, faithfully, it becomes near again. This is the mystery Neville revealed so plainly yet so powerfully. Creation is finished. Everything you seek already exists. You do not create the outcome, you select it. You do not build the bridge. You walk across it by assuming the end. He calleth those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. What a divine paradox. You call it done even when nothing is visible. And it is that calling that makes it real. Not because the outer changes first, but because you do. You begin to understand that your greatest work is internal. It is not in fixing the world, nor persuading people, nor forcing circumstance. It is in the simple sacred act of dwelling in the wish fulfilled. To dwell, not visit. To remain, not reach. To abide in the state of the fulfilled desire, as if it were your truest home. Because it is. The senses will try to pull you back into doubt, into delay. But now you know better. You've tasted the peace of living from the end. And you refuse to be dragged into the wilderness of how and when. You don't need evidence. You are the evidence. Every breath, every smile, every relaxed heartbeat affirms what you've chosen to believe. You walk like someone who has already been answered. You move through the world not as a seeker but as a receiver. And this shift is everything. The world around you might not yet understand. They may ask, why do you act like it's done? And you will smile, not in arrogance but in knowing, because you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. You're simply being who you truly are. The imagination once doubted and dismissed, now becomes your sacred altar. There in stillness you see and feel all that you desire, already yours. You don't beg, you embody, and this embodiment is magnetic. You start to notice how people respond differently. Opportunities arise not through striving but through grace. The right ideas arrive, the right moments unfold, All of this happens because you made a quiet, unwavering decision to assume, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Notice the sequence. Believe that you receive, then you shall have. The belief precedes the physical. The assumption comes before the fact. You don't wait for the world to give you permission to feel fulfilled. You give yourself that permission first, and then the world catches up. You are not chasing life. You are shaping it. Internally, gently, persistently. Even when doubt whispers, you return to your chosen state. Even when old thoughts try to reassert themselves, you re-enter the inner sanctuary, and over time this becomes second nature. Your resting place is now the fulfilled state. You dream not to escape, but to create. You imagine not to fantasize, but to form. You assume not out of wishful thinking, but out of a deep spiritual knowing. You know who you are, you know what you have, and you know what you are becoming, because in truth you already are. The bridge of incidents unfolds quietly, sometimes invisibly, but you walk across it in peace, no longer hurrying, no longer grasping, but trusting, because the wish fulfilled is no longer a distant hope. It is your present dwelling, and in this dwelling you sleep easily. You rise gently, you speak deliberately. Every thought becomes a prayer, every feeling a prophecy, every moment an unfolding of the invisible, made visible. You do not need the world to change before you rest. You rest, and the world changes. And so softly, quietly, you return again to that sacred assumption, the one that whispers not someday but now, not if but I am. And as you abide in the state of the wish fulfilled, you begin to witness the subtle softening of time. Moments stretch like silk. The future loses its edge. You are no longer leaning forward into desire, nor clinging to the past like driftwood in the waves. You're simply being a still presence, anchored in the end that already is. Neville once said, all transformation begins with an intense burning desire to be transformed. But it is not desire alone that creates the change. It is the assumption, the quiet, complete acceptance that what you have asked is already given. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Genesis 1:3. He did not ask. He declared, he assumed. And it was. You see, the language of assumption is not maybe. It is not I hope or someday. It is let there be. It is the speech of the Creator within you. The divine spark that forms reality not by force but by faithful imagining. This is why your inner world must become more vivid than the outer. Not to reject the physical but to redeem it. When you imagine vividly, you don't simply entertain a dream. You infuse it with life. You give it breath. You give it form. You give it residence within you. And whatever resides within you must eventually appear without. That is law. Not because you're worthy or lucky or chosen, but because you are consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality. So when you assume the wish fulfilled, you are not pretending. You are participating in the creative act of God. You are entering the state from which all things are made. And from that state you speak differently. Not as someone hoping for change, but as someone who knows change is already done. You walk through life with a softness in your eyes. You listen more than you explain. You do not chase signs or beg for omens, because you've already been answered in the stillness of imagination. And when the senses tempt you, when reality seems unchanged, you close your eyes again, not in denial but in deeper devotion. Because you know the outer is just an echo, a reflection, a shadow of the real thing taking shape within. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. This substance is what you feel when you assume. It's that sacred click inside your chest, that subtle yes that whispers, it is done. And that feeling, more than any technique or ritual, is the doorway. Not effort, not struggle, but feeling. So you return to the scene you've crafted within. You see the outcome. You hear the words spoken after your wishes come true. You feel the weight of the result, the joy, the freedom, the relief. You do not try to figure out how it happens. You do not script every step. You only live in the end. And in that end, time collapses. Events shift. People move. Ideas are born not from desperation but from divine coordination. Because once the assumption is fixed, once you hold it with love and reverence, everything conspires to meet you there. You become magnetic, not by doing more but by being more. More sure, more peaceful, more whole. The assumption is not a thing you visit. It's a place you dwell. It's a rhythm you live by. You are not waiting. You are preparing. You are aligning. You are remembering who you are. And even when nothing changes on the surface, you remain steadfast, quiet, unwavering. Because now you know you are not manifesting to become worthy. You are manifesting because you already are. Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7. To ask in this sacred sense is not to beg. It is to enter into the feeling of being already answered. Melts away, and only surrender remains. Surrender not in the sense of giving up, but giving in to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you assume the end, you are no longer reacting, you are initiating. You become cause rather than effect. To assume is not to fight reality, it is to transcend it. You let go of the argument, the need to convince the world, or even yourself. You gently place your attention on the feeling that you are already what you desire to be. And that feeling, so subtle, so quiet, is the whisper of creation itself. Let the weak say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. Why say it? Because in saying, in assuming, you are redefining your reality, not through force but through identity. The man who says, I am strong, may appear weak to the senses, but in imagination he walks as strength. And because he lives in that strength, the world must mirror it back. For your world is not what it seems. It is only ever telling you what you have first told yourself. And when your inner dialogue shifts, so too does the world's response. This is why you do not need to strive outwardly. You only need to remain loyal inwardly. Remain loyal to the unseen, to the version of you that already has, already is, already knows. Even when doubt knocks, even when appearances challenge you, you return quietly, gently to the assumption. This is not about pretending. It's about re-identifying. You are not faking it. You are remembering, for deep down, beneath the stories and conditions, you have always been whole. You have always been enough. You have always had the power. You simply forgot. But now you are awakening. Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Ephesians 5:14. The Christ in you is your imagination. It is the divine creative force, capable of taking you from any state into any other, by assumption alone. You don't have to earn your desire. You don't have to prove your worthiness. You only need to claim it, feel it, rest in it, and let that feeling nourish you. Like roots drawing water from the unseen, you soak in the reality of your wish fulfilled, until it becomes more real to you than what your senses report. This is how time collapses. You are not waiting for the world to change. You are changing first, and the world hurries to follow. Everything speeds up when you slow down. Every door opens when you stop knocking and start dwelling. You were never meant to chase what's already yours. You were meant to receive it, with grace, with peace, with quiet certainty. And in receiving, you give the greatest gift to the world, a being fully alive in their truth, that more than words or teachings becomes your testimony. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony. Revelation 12:11. Your life lived in faith becomes the testimony. You do not need to preach, you only need to be. And in your being, others awaken. They see your peace, your joy, your unwavering posture, and something stirs in them. They ask, what changed? And you may simply smile, for you know nothing changed, except the place from which you live. And you chose to live from the end. You don't climb the mountain by efforting your way to the top. You close your eyes and you place yourself at the summit. You feel the wind that only blows there. You breathe the air reserved for those heights. You imagine the view, and the view imagines you. And God calleth those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. You do not call them what they appear to be. You call them what they are in your imagination. And it is in this calling, this naming, this claiming, that the invisible becomes visible, the distant becomes near, and the future becomes now. Do not concern yourself with how it comes. That is not your task. The mechanism, the details, the chain of events, all of it bends to your state of being. You are not here to manipulate the clay, but to dwell in the finished sculpture. The sculptor does not fight the marble. He simply sees the form already within. Likewise, within your imagination lies the completed version of your desire. You don't force it into shape. You assume it already is. The assumption, held in faith and felt deeply, does not ask the world to comply. It expects it. And this expectation, without anxiety or tension, is the mark of true surrender. The kind of surrender that says, I know whom I have believed. 2 Timothy 1:12. When the world looks unchanged, you do not shift. You do not argue with what is. You gently return to what you know, not what you hope, not what you plead for, but what you know. You carry that knowing like a flame in the dark, small, quiet, but utterly alive. And as you walk with it, the world begins to light up. Events reconfigure. People respond differently. Paths appear where none existed before. And still you do not look outside to verify. You continue living from within, because you understand now, the outer world is only the echo. Your true voice is within. So when doubt whispers, you do not shout back. You simply breathe deeper into the feeling. You remain in the state. That's the power to stay loyal to the unseen. For we walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. To walk by faith is not to ignore reality. It is to define it, not arrogantly but reverently, as one who understands that the Father and I are one, and if I and the Father are one, then I am the author of this story, not merely its reader. You can rewrite the script at any moment, not by editing scenes, but by embodying a new character. You assume the identity that has what you desire. You speak as them, you walk as them, you rest as them. Even in silence, you are them. And from this identity, life flows differently, not forced but fluid. It's like becoming the ocean instead of trying to paddle your way upstream. You are carried, but you're not passive. You are deliberate, but not strained. You are choosing, but from rest, not from effort. This is the gentle paradox of living in the wish fulfilled. You act, but not to make it happen. You act because it has already happened. You pray, but not to ask. You pray to align, to return to the center where all things are already done. You imagine, not to escape, but to reveal. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Luke 12:32. And what is the kingdom if not the reality in which you are already whole, already loved, already in possession of your dream? When you live from that, everything changes, or rather everything reveals itself for what it truly is, and you, calm and still in the center of your being, need only persist. Persist not with strain but with faith. Persist with softness, with grace, with the smile of someone who knows they already have it. And in time, or perhaps beyond time, what you assume becomes what you see. And so it is you find yourself dwelling more often in the stillness. Not the stillness of doing nothing, but the stillness that births all movement. The stillness that knows. The stillness that carries the echo of "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46:10. From this sacred quiet you no longer chase, you invite. And more than that, you allow. The desire no longer feels like a gap to be filled. It feels like a truth you're remembering. You do not beg for change. You assume it is already complete and you simply rest there. And this rest is not laziness, it is mastery. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you enter a reality that already knows you, a reality that welcomes you because you belong there. You are not an intruder. You are the rightful heir. For the Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. Romans 8:16-17. Joint heirs, not merely recipients, co-creators. And what does a co-creator do? They imagine with authority. They feel with conviction. They walk not in fear of being denied, but in the calm certainty of possession. You don't knock endlessly at the door. You walk through it, because you know the house is yours. This knowing, this radical faith in the unseen, is what collapses time. Because time is only the distance between your current identity and the one who already has the thing. But when you take on that identity now, time folds in upon itself. It is no longer needed. You dissolve it in the assumption. So how do you do this in the moments of doubt? When the world outside refuses to play along, you return inward. You shut the door to the outer man, and you go into the closet of your mind as he instructed. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. Matthew 6:6. The secret place, that sacred inner temple where no doubt can enter, where the world's logic holds no power, where you are already one with your wish, and there you see it again, you feel it, you touch the end as if it were now, and you rest in it as though it were your pillow, not needing to convince yourself, not needing to rehearse your belief. You just breathe in the atmosphere of the end, and every breath is a prayer, every sigh a silent thank you, because you understand now, the greatest act of faith is the feeling of gratitude before the thing arrives, and in truth it has arrived. You just haven't seen it with your outer eyes yet, but your inner eyes, they've already danced with it. They've held it like a lover, felt it like sunlight, trusted it like home. This is the secret of assumption, to feel as though it were already so, not to trick yourself, not to pretend, but to become. You become the version of you for whom the desire is ordinary, not a miracle, not a surprise, but the natural outcome of who you are. And when you feel it that way, when your desire becomes a simple truth in your inner world, that's when it shows up in your outer one, not always with fanfare, sometimes quietly, as if it had always been there, because in a way it had. It was waiting not for your effort but for your alignment. And now, having assumed the end, you are no longer waiting, you are remembering. You live not in anticipation but in reflection, every step a retracing of what's already done. And this is why your faith is not loud, it's not boastful, It's not desperate. It is subtle, like a current beneath the surface, guiding everything, moving mountains beneath still waters. It is there when you wake, when you speak, when you walk into rooms and carry a presence that cannot be denied. People won't know what changed, but they will feel it. You will not need to explain. Your state will do the speaking, because you are no longer a seeker. You are a knower, and in that knowing, the world bends to greet the version of you who always had it. It is here in this state of quiet assurance that you begin to see the world not as it is, but as you are. You no longer scan the horizon for proof. You no longer beg the outer for signs. You have understood that the signs follow. They are not leaders, they are mirrors. These signs shall follow them that believe. Mark 16:17, not precede, not convince. Follow, like the shadow that trails your movement, like the echo that chases your voice. And what is belief if not the assumption made real within? The act of walking through your day carrying an inner mood that reflects the wish fulfilled. It may not always be fireworks. It may not always feel grand. Often it feels like peace. A strange, steady peace in a world that offers 1,000 reasons to panic. It's not that the outer has changed yet. It's that you have. And when you change, everything must eventually bend to meet you. It has no choice, because the world is not built outside in. It flows inside out. You are not reacting anymore. You are selecting. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are choosing. And you choose not with effort but with attention. You give your attention only to what aligns with the end. You no longer entertain what doesn't match the inner image. Not because you're afraid, but because you're loyal. Loyal to the unseen. Loyal to the vision. Loyal to the you that already has it. This is what it means to live in faith. Not to hope anxiously but to feel quietly certain. And when the world pokes at you, when delays stretch longer than you expected, when conditions appear to contradict your assumption, you smile gently inside, because you've rehearsed this moment. You've felt it all before, and you already know how it ends. That inner knowing becomes your shelter. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Psalm 91:5. 7. The outer storms may rage, but you remain untouched, because your world is no longer built on sight. It is built on seeing. And to see in Neville's teaching is to imagine. You are not daydreaming. You are designing. Your imagination is the blueprint. Your feeling is the substance. And time is just the drying of the paint. And so you wait, not with impatience, but with calm. Every breath is a return to the state, to the version of you who is already wearing the ring, already sitting at the table, already driving the car, already hearing congratulations, already watching the curtain fall on the scene. You don't merely visit the end. You move in. You decorate the walls. You memorize the light through the windows. You become familiar. And from that familiarity comes a shift. You stop trying to become. You realize you already are. You're not becoming successful. You're remembering your success. You're not attracting love. You're opening the door to what's always been knocking. This isn't magic. It's law. And the law responds to the assumption, not the plea. So you assume it boldly, without justification, without evidence, without needing to explain. Because the moment you do, the moment you feel it real, your world is set in motion. Perhaps not immediately, perhaps not in ways you expect, but it is set, and nothing can unset it but you. So you stay loyal, you stay gentle, you stay relaxed, and from that relaxed state, you hear whispers in the quiet, a new idea, a person reaching out, a chance encounter, a door you hadn't noticed before, and suddenly, effortlessly, what you once called impossible is your everyday, and you don't even feel surprised, because you've lived it already. The outer world has only just caught up. And now you begin to feel a strange detachment from outcomes. Not because you no longer care, but because you already have it. Desire no longer burns painfully, it warms quietly like an ember of certainty. You do not chase. You do not strive. You assume. What things soever ye desire when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them. Mark 11:24. It's not a transaction, it's a transformation. You are not persuading some distant force. You are embodying a version of yourself where the desire is no longer a question. You let it live in you before it ever lives outside you. And in that space, that sacred inner atmosphere, you walk with confidence. Not arrogance, not performance, but grace. You begin to see that people, places, and things are not the cause of your feelings. They are reflections of your inner movement. The moment you feel unworthy, they show up to mirror that. The moment you feel chosen, they align to confirm it. And so your only true labor is to remain faithful to the feeling, faithful not in words but in atmosphere, to enter the mood of the wish fulfilled and rest there, to sleep answered, to knock, not as one unsure but as one expected. You are not on the outside. You are not a stranger to your own blessing. You have been given the key, and the key is assumption. And as you assume, as you dwell, as you feel your way into the end, you begin to understand that this is not a formula of effort, but of rest, a holy rest, where you don't wait for signs to prove it's working. You become the sign that it already has. And as you dwell in this holy rest, you begin to notice the air around you carries a different weight, not heavy with longing, but light with certainty. There is no need to force or convince. You have moved beyond effort into knowing, beyond striving into being. This is the mystery of assumption, that what you claim within, quietly, persistently, faithfully, will echo through the corridors of time until it stands before you in the flesh. It may come gently like the morning sun casting warmth across your room, or swiftly like a sudden wind that rearranges everything, but it will come. It must. For the universe is not reacting to your needs. It is reflecting your state, as within so without. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Believe that ye receive them, not tomorrow, not when the world cooperates, but now. Now in the stillness of your own being you receive. And this receiving is not always loud. Often it feels like a whisper in your soul, a soft, sacred agreement that your prayer is already fulfilled. You begin to move through life with quiet dignity. Your steps are not hurried but purposeful. Your speech is no longer shaped by fear but colored with peace. People may ask what has changed. They may notice something different in your eyes, but you won't feel the need to explain, because the deepest transformations are silent, invisible, until they are undeniable. There is a power in assuming your desire is already yours, not because it tricks the universe, but because it aligns you with who you really are. You are not separate from your desire. You are not chasing it down the corridors of time. You are the one who holds the key to the door it already stands behind, and that key is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not someday, not maybe, but now. You feel it in your chest like a warmth that doesn't fade. You see it in your mind like a scene etched in gold. You return to it like a sacred song that always knows your name, and as you return you become it. Not someone reaching for the promise, but someone living from it. This is the meaning of living in the end. You don't just picture the outcome, you embody it. You wake as if it were true. You speak as if it were true. You walk as if it were true. Not to fake it, but to faith it. Let the weak say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. Not because strength has arrived, but because the word brings it forth. So you speak from your future, not about it. You hold yourself in the feeling of done, and the world as always rises to meet you there. At first it may seem slow. You may not see evidence. But the true test of assumption is not how quickly it manifests, but how deeply you can remain, even when the senses lie, even when doubt whispers, even when the mirror shows no change, because you know the outer world is the past, a shadow of what you used to feel, and the new state you dwell in, the assumption you now carry, is the present moment of God. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Stillness is not passivity, it is power. It is the calm knowing that what you have assumed must come to pass, because the assumption is a seed, and the seed once planted bears fruit in its season. You are no longer digging it up to check for progress. You are watering it with faith. You are shining the light of attention upon it, and trusting that its roots grow deep, even when you see nothing on the surface. This is the sacred discipline of living from the end, of walking each day not to find the answer but to embody it, to fold your blankets in the morning with joy, because you know you already have what you once hoped for, to breathe as one who no longer waits, to smile at a world that reflects your inner certainty, because now the bridge of incidents begins to appear, not by your design but by divine orchestration. You will look back and see how perfectly it unfolded, but for now you simply walk in faith, and that is enough. And so, you walk, not in search of proof but in quiet agreement with your soul. Every breath becomes an affirmation, not spoken aloud but whispered deep within. It is done. You do not try to make it happen. You do not beg nor plead. You do not question the soil once the seed is buried. Instead, you live as though the seed has already bloomed. This is not delusion. It is divine alignment. For all that is real must first be imagined, and all that is imagined with faith must eventually wear the robe of reality. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Faith is not blind belief. It is the spiritual vision that sees beyond the veil of the senses. It is the eye within that looks at the unseen and calls it real, before it ever becomes visible to the world. And in that calling, in that sacred acknowledgement of the unseen as already true, you collapse the gap between now and what is to come. You make time your servant, not your master, because time was never the true barrier. It was only your doubt stretching the distance between who you are and who you believe yourself to be. But now you shift. You no longer wait. You become. You put on the state as easily as you would put on a new coat, letting it settle across your shoulders, letting its warmth remind you, this is mine. This state is yours to inhabit, not because you earned it, but because you chose it. You assume the wish fulfilled not to trick the universe, but because you are the universe in expression, and your assumption is its instruction. According to your faith be it unto you. Matthew 9:29. This is not conditional love, it is divine law, immutable, perfect, and impartial. It does not punish, it does not delay, it reflects. And so in your stillness you assume, not loudly, not forcefully, but with that quiet inner nod, as if to say, yes, I remember now, this is who I am. And that remembrance begins to echo through your world. It colors your conversations, it shapes your decisions, it changes your posture, your presence, your peace. You are no longer reacting, you are creating from within, and the world, that old mirror of your mind, begins to shift. Not because you tried to change it, but because you changed your inner address. You move from someday to already. You walk from hoping to knowing, from longing to being. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. It is already yours. It was always waiting, not to be chased, but to be claimed. And you claim it, not with force, but with feeling. You step into the scene. You taste it with your imagination. You touch it in the silence of your soul. And then you rest, not the rest of defeat, but the holy rest of fulfillment, like one who has eaten and is satisfied, like one who has prayed and no longer needs to ask again, because they know, in the secret place of the Most High, that it is finished. And when you live in this place, even sleep becomes sacred, for in sleep you return to the imaginal world, where your assumptions form the architecture of tomorrow. So you sleep not with worry, but with wonder. You drift not in doubt, but in deep assurance. And as the night carries you, your wish, already fulfilled, settles deeper into the fabric of your being. You are not waiting, you are welcoming, and the world will soon echo back what you have already become. And so, the world responds not to your words, but to your inner atmosphere, not to what you say out loud, but to the tone of your being. What you are speaks louder than what you want. To assume the wish fulfilled is to shift your very essence from the posture of lack to the stillness of abundance. Let the weak say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. That is not denial, that is divine instruction. It is the invitation to declare yourself as the thing desired, not because you have proof, but because your imagination is the proof. The outer world is slow, sluggish in comparison to spirit. It lags behind the speed of your assumption. And so, you wait not in despair, but in quiet confidence, like a mother carrying life within her, not needing to see it to believe in it. You nurture your state not with force, but with gentle inner tending. When doubts rise, as they often do, you do not fight them. You do not push against them. You return to the scene, to the feeling, to the silent knowing that it is done. Be still, and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. There is no greater stillness than the stillness of one who no longer questions, no greater peace than the peace of one who knows the end has already been secured. You are not persuading reality, you are clothing yourself in it. Just as you would dress for the weather you expect, you dress your inner world for the life you have chosen. And just as the seed beneath the earth must push through darkness before it blooms, your assumptions work first in silence, invisible, yes, but not inactive. They reshape the contours of your experience without fanfare, without noise. There is no need to explain it to others. They will see it in time. They will feel the shift in you, not always in words, but in presence. You carry the fragrance of fulfillment, like the scent of blossoms before spring has arrived. And those around you, though they may not understand, will begin to respond to the change. For all life is vibrational, and your assumption is a frequency, a signal sent out saying, this is who I am now, and the world, faithful as ever, will echo it back. You are not alone in this. The Father in you doeth the work. It is not your effort, but your surrender that moves the mountains. All things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. Matthew 21:22. Believing does not mean hoping. It does not mean needing. It means dwelling. It is the holy act of dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. To believe is to feel, and to feel is to become. No detail is too small, no desire too big. The laws of imagination do not concern themselves with scale, only with certainty. And certainty is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is quiet, simple, certain like the rising sun. You feel it before you see it. You live it before the world recognizes it. This is why Neville taught to act as if you were already the man or woman you desire to be, not pretending in the outer world but embodying it in the inner sanctuary, where all things are conceived. Your imagination is the womb of creation. What you nurture within it you will birth, and the more real it becomes to you inside, the faster it must appear outside. There is no delay but doubt, no barrier but belief. So you soften, you relax into the feeling, you let go of needing to see, and instead become the one who knows. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Believe that you receive them, not that you will, but that you have. And from that place of already having, you radiate peace, you radiate joy, you radiate faith, not as effort but as identity. You are the wish fulfilled. The old world begins to fade, and the new world quietly, gently rises to meet you. And as the old world begins to dissolve, not by force but by disinterest, you find that nothing external holds power over you anymore. It is not the circumstance that binds you but your identification with it. Once you cease identifying with the lack, once you no longer tell the story of not yet, the energy shifts. The prison doors open, for you were never locked in by the world, only by the assumptions you married quietly in the dark. Assumption is marriage. It is union. When you accept something as true and live from it, you have become one with it. And from that union creation takes form. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Mark 10:9. This is not only about people, it is the divine law. When your mind and your feeling are in agreement, nothing external can separate you from your manifestation. To assume the wish fulfilled is not to beg or plead. It is not to convince a distant God to grant your desires. It is to commune with the God within, to align with the infinite presence that has already said yes. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. You do not need to strive. You need only to receive. Not receive like catching a passing breeze, but receive as one receives breath, effortless, natural, unquestioned. This is the simplicity of divine law. But simplicity is not always easy. The mind addicted to effort finds it strange to relax into truth. So you practice. You practice relaxing into your chosen state like slipping into warm water. No urgency, no pressure, just being. Each time you catch yourself reaching, you return to the knowing. It is already mine, not will be, not hopefully soon, but already, now within. The kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:21. Do you see the pattern? All throughout Scripture you are not being led to earn or chase. You are being reminded again and again that the treasure is already here. And what is within, when faithfully assumed, must express itself without. That is the law. To assume the wish fulfilled is to walk differently, not with arrogance but with assurance. Your steps carry the quiet confidence of one who has already arrived. You speak from the outcome. You rest in the outcome. You expect from the outcome. And the world, unaware of the sacred shift you've made, begins to bend itself around your being. Because what you radiate, you magnetize. This is not magic. It is obedience to a higher order. When your feeling aligns with your desire, you collapse time. You draw the unseen into form. The longer you linger in the fulfilled state, the shorter the distance between you and its outer echo. And you will marvel not at what came to pass, but at how natural it feels, as if it had always been this way. Because in truth it had been, in imagination. Imagination is not fantasy. It is the only true reality. The world outside is a shadow. The inner world, when honored, casts that shadow. So rather than look outward for evidence, you turn inward for authority. Rather than check the mirror, you adjust your face. And your inner expression, your posture of being, shapes the reflection. You live from the end, not to impress others, but because that end is who you are now. You stop talking about someday because your soul has already arrived. You speak not of becoming but of being. And in that sacred stillness all things are drawn to you, not by striving but by resonance. For creation responds not to words but to states. The wish fulfilled is not a destination, it is a frequency. And when you abide in it long enough, it becomes your new home, not by accident, not by effort, but by faith. There is a kind of silence that holds more power than 1,000 declarations. It is the silence of knowing, not hoping, not wishing, but knowing that it is done. This silence doesn't need to be explained or justified. It exists like a deep river, steady beneath the surface, untouched by the noise of the outer world. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. This is the stillness from which manifestation is born, the kind of stillness where resistance melts. To breathe in it, to walk through your day with the quiet knowing, it is done. Even when doubts whisper, you don't argue with them. You smile. You say, that's not mine, and you return. You return to the scene you saw in the stillness of imagination, the one where you were already there, already victorious, already loved, already safe. He calleth those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. And in doing so he makes them so. This is the true act of creation, not waiting but assuming, not hoping but inhabiting. You walk as though, you breathe as though, and slowly the world forgets who you used to be and starts responding to who you become. The phone call comes, the message arrives, the door opens, and people call it luck. But you know better. You know it began in silence, in the invisible, in that holy moment when you chose to believe without needing to see. And even when nothing was happening, you were becoming. Even in the delay, you were deepening. The seed had taken root. The tree may not have grown tall overnight, but it was growing, always. So now you stop rushing the process. You stop asking when, and instead ask how deeply you can feel. You tune your heart to the melody of the end, and as you do, you collapse time. Not by force, but by alignment. Time bends for the one who no longer waits, because in imagination you are already there. To him that hath more shall be given. Matthew 13:12. To the one who has assumed life rushes to catch up. It bows, it yields, it makes way. And you still, grounded, calm, become the cause, not the effect. You move first and the world echoes. You feel first and the forms follow. You no longer seek validation. You give it to yourself. You no longer wait to be seen. You see yourself fully, and that vision shines through your skin. There is no resistance in you. Just rest. You've made peace with the unseen. You've made peace with now. And in that peace, everything you've ever longed for has found its way home. And now you notice something subtle, yet sacred. The more you dwell in the end, the less noise there is in your mind. The inner chatter begins to hush, like a sea growing still at dusk. Doubt no longer roars. It barely whispers. And when it does, you meet it with stillness, not struggle. For you have tasted the truth. You are the operant power. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. This stillness isn't passive. It's creative. It's a sanctuary where assumptions are born. And in this quiet, you begin to sense that the outer world has less to teach you than the world within. You no longer run from the silence. You rest in it. Because in that stillness you remember. You remember that assuming the wish fulfilled is not pretending. It's choosing. It's not make-believe. It's spiritual law. You are not here to rehearse lack. You are here to rehearse fulfillment. Each time you close your eyes, you enter the theater of becoming. And the scene you choose to replay is not just a vision. It is a command to reality. This is why Neville spoke not of effort, but of surrender. Not of willpower, but of feeling. According to your faith be it unto you. Matthew 9:29. And what is faith if not fidelity to an unseen reality? You begin to understand that what you see in your world is not the result of hard labor, but inner loyalty. Loyalty to your assumption. And so when old emotions arise, when worry knocks at your door or the shadows of your past resurface, you don't resist them with fear. You welcome them with knowing. You say, I see you, but you are not mine anymore. And you return, not with desperation, but devotion to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Like returning home after a long journey, you step back into the end as if you never left. You feel the warm welcome of it, the familiar joy. And suddenly all the world around you seems to rearrange itself to reflect the new order within. Strangers become messengers, delays become divine detours, and closed doors begin to open, quietly, gently, as if they were waiting for you all along. You don't need to force anything now. You don't hustle or plead. You walk with the poise of someone who knows their prayers have already been heard. You breathe with the ease of someone who knows there is nothing to chase, only to allow. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive. Matthew 21:22. And so you believe, not with strained effort, but with soft certainty. You know that the dream that visits you at night is not just fantasy, it's a preview. You know the scene you replay in imagination is not idle, it is causal. And you no longer apologize for desiring more. You no longer shrink to fit the world. Instead, you expand quietly from within, letting your inner world outgrow your old shell. You bloom, not by effort, but by assumption. And every time you assume the wish fulfilled, you water that blooming with faith. It doesn't matter what your senses say. You've stopped using them as the ruler of what's real. Your reality now begins where feeling starts. What once seemed impossible is now inevitable. You need not explain yourself. You need not prove anything to anyone. You simply live, in the end. And the end, strangely enough, feels more like a beginning. For in the depth of that assumption, life opens. The mind may wander, as it always will. But you are not the mind, you are the awareness beneath it, beyond it, before it ever formed a single thought. You no longer wrestle with circumstances trying to outsmart life, because you've learned the sacred truth. Consciousness is the only reality, and now you trust it. You rest in the awareness that what you feel deeply and consistently within must harden into fact. Not maybe, not sometimes, it must. This is not superstition. It is not wishful thinking. It is divine principle etched into the very fabric of existence. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Romans 1:20. Everything that is made, every form you touch, every voice you hear, every turn of events, all of it emerges from the unseen imaginal realm. The moment you stop needing evidence, it appears. The moment you cease questioning how, the way unfolds. And in that silence, between wanting and receiving, you discover your power. You were never meant to hustle for your miracles. You were meant to embody them. This is the secret Neville whispered to us all, the one hidden in plain sight, masked by its simplicity. You do not need to wait for signs. You are the sign. You are the fulfilled state walking through time, rearranging it. The world is not reacting to your effort. It is responding to your identity, and your identity is shaped by assumption. You don't look in the mirror hoping to see someone new. You become them in consciousness first, and then, as if in a dream, the world complies. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. And you've begun to think from the heart, not just with words or visualizations, but with the steady pulse of inner knowing. You've stopped asking, when will it come? And instead you feel as though it's already here. You greet the moment with gratitude, not as a strategy, but as a natural expression of truth. You walk differently. You speak with a softness that only certainty brings. And when you lie down at night, you don't worry. You return to your secret place, that sacred inner sanctuary, where you replay not your fears, but your fulfilled desires. You rest in the arms of your own imagination, letting it carry you across the threshold into another world. You fall asleep in the end, and wake in a life more aligned. And over time, not always by fireworks, but often through quiet arrangements, things shift, people show up, opportunities unfold, paths light up beneath your feet that you never noticed before. But none of it surprises you, because you were there already, in spirit, in feeling. You had walked those halls, you had shaken those hands, you had heard those words of praise before anyone else spoke them aloud. And now, the world is catching up. It always does. Not because you manipulated it, but because you became it. That is the essence of assuming the wish fulfilled. You don't chase your future. You receive it in consciousness, and then you let the world conform. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. You're not waiting for the external to change. You're living from the inside out. This is not delusion. It's devotion. Devotion to your inner world. Devotion to the truth that your imagination is God in action. And when you honor that, miracles become the norm. Not because you need them to validate you, but because they are the echo of your inner alignment. And now you move forward. Not to create, but to express. Not to beg, but to be. The wish fulfilled is no longer a goal. It is your state. And from that state, everything flows. And so the old story begins to dissolve, not with a fight, but with neglect. You no longer feed the identity of limitation. You've stopped rehearsing failure, abandonment, doubt. They still knock, from time to time, but you don't answer. You remain centered in the only story worth telling, that it is already done. You are no longer looking to the past for explanation or evidence. You look to the end. You live there. You breathe there. You rest there. And from that holy place all else aligns. Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing, now it shall spring forth, shall ye not know it? Isaiah 43:18-19. You don't need to tear down the old house brick by brick. You simply walk out of it and build a new one in the unseen. And by law the outer must rearrange itself to match the inner dwelling. You're no longer affirming for hours, hoping to convince some force outside of you. You are being what you once sought. In stillness, in silence, you speak the most powerful prayer, not in words but in feeling. You move through your day as the person who already has it. You don't declare yourself healed to fix the body, you feel from the health you already possess in imagination. You don't shout abundance into a void. You live from the awareness that all you need is already yours. And in this you collapse time. Because time bends around assumption. It is not the ticking of clocks that determines when it comes. It is your state of being. And when your state is one of fulfilled desire, you are no longer waiting. You are remembering. And memory carries power. It is not a passive reflection. It is creative force. What you remember with feeling returns to you clothed in form. So instead of waiting, you recall. You imagine it done and remember what it felt like to be there. Because in truth you have been there. In the realm of imagination you arrived the moment you assumed it real. And now you walk back into the dream, not with effort but with ease. Not trying to force anything but simply tuning into the version of yourself who already lives the outcome. And as you dwell there, the mind quiets. The breath slows. The world softens. The hunger for signs, the obsession with timing, it fades. You don't need to beg for rain when you stand already soaked in it. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. And this is your faith, not blind belief but embodied knowing. You walk as if, you feel as if, you rest as if, and in doing so you summon the invisible into visibility, not through pressure but through peace. The universe doesn't rush, it reflects, and now it mirrors you. You feel the reality so deeply the world has no choice but to take shape around it. You don't micromanage the how, you leave that to the unseen intelligence woven through all things. You tend to the garden within, you water it with belief, sunlight it with gratitude, and prune it gently of doubt, and you trust that what is sown will rise, not because you forced it but because you remain faithful to the end. The wish fulfilled, not wished for, but fulfilled, already. That is where you dwell now, not in hope, not in someday, but in the eternal now where it is already done, and this changes everything. You do not chase the reflection in the mirror, you adjust the face that stands before it. This is the great secret, quiet and still, yet thunderous in its truth. The outer is never cause, it is only echo. And if you desire new echoes, you do not beg the valley. You change the voice that speaks. This is why Neville said, dare to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, not someday, not when the world gives you permission, but now, right here in the silence where no one sees you, but all is shaped. You withdraw your attention from the noise of appearances, not in rebellion, but in reverence for something greater. You are no longer a servant to what is. You are the author of what will be. Call those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. And so you do. You say thank you for the thing not yet seen, as if it were already yours, and something shifts, not outside, but within. A subtle click, a new alignment, as if you've moved a dial and tuned into a clearer frequency. The static of fear begins to fade. The humming of truth grows louder. You feel it, not because the senses confirm, but because the spirit whispers in stillness, it is done. And this inner knowing is more solid than any brick and mortar fact. So you walk through your day differently now. You're no longer the seeker, but the one who has found. You no longer speak from need, but from fulfillment. Not in arrogance, but in divine inheritance. You claim what was always yours, not with clenched fists, but with open hands. And in your imagination, you rehearse the joy. You welcome the relief. You absorb the peace as if it were already flooding your reality. This is not pretense. This is prophecy. You live the end, and the means come running. You are no longer waiting for a knock. You've already opened the door. You eat at the banquet, while others still ask for the invitation, because the kingdom is within, and you at last have turned inward. The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, Lo here, or Lo there. For behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:20, 21. It was never out there. It was never behind the next goal, the next message, the next approval. It was in your consciousness all along. And now that you know, you don't need to fight the old. You simply withdraw your belief from it, not with disdain, but with understanding. You've outgrown it. The poverty mindset, the victim identity, the loneliness story, they no longer fit, and so they fall away. Not because you forced them out, but because you stopped agreeing with them. You are clothed in new garments now, the robe of your assumption, the ring of your divine authority. Bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. Luke 15:22. You are the prodigal return, not from a physical place, but from a mental state. You wandered through limitation, and now you have remembered home. You've remembered who you are, not flesh and bone alone, but imagination made manifest. So now you feel it real, and let it be enough. You don't need to see it to believe. You believe. You see, and in this belief, time bends, obstacles soften, the crooked becomes straight, not because you pushed, but because you align. And now you live as the one for whom it is already done, quietly, peacefully, powerfully. The seed has been planted. The harvest is inevitable. The harvest is inevitable, but the wise do not stare at the soil. They trust the law. They trust the law. They water with faith. They shine the light of gratitude, and they rest knowing that the seed beneath the surface is already becoming. You don't beg a flower to bloom. You don't shake the tree and demand fruit. You become still, and in stillness you understand the rhythms of creation. This is how assumption works, not with tension but with trust. To assume the wish fulfilled is to know it is yours with the quiet confidence of a child who knows his father's promise will never fail. What things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Neville said prayer is not supplication. It is surrender. It is assuming the state of the answered prayer, not asking for rain, but walking as if the soil is already soaked, not hoping for love, but becoming love's embodiment, not wishing for success, but moving with the assurance of one who already carries the crown. And how do you do this? You close your eyes and feel the scene. You enter it so completely that the outer world begins to blur. And in that inner sanctuary you speak with no words. You see with no eyes. You hear with the ear of spirit. You dwell in the end. You live from it, not toward it. That is the secret. The assumption is not a temporary gain. It is a permanent residence. You remain faithful to the state even when the outer world still reflects the old. You do not panic. You do not question, because you know, as within, so without. And while others chase shadows, you become the light. You become what you longed for, not by reaching but by remembering. You don't need to convince the world. You don't even need to convince yourself. You need only feel it real until it becomes familiar. And it will, like a song you once loved and forgot, until a single chord plays, and it all rushes back. This feeling, the wish fulfilled, is your soul's melody. And when you hum it again, life responds in harmony. You will see signs, not because they persuade you, but because they reflect you. The birds in the sky, the numbers on the clock, a sentence spoken by a stranger, all begin to echo your inner world, because creation is finished. Neville taught this, that every possibility already exists. You are not making something new. You are selecting what already is. I am the Lord and there is none else. There is no God beside me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done. Isaiah 45:5, 46:10. You are simply choosing the end you wish to dwell in. And once you move in, the world reconfigures to match your new address. Old paths collapse, new doors appear, not because you pushed, because you shifted. You assumed the wish fulfilled, and so you became the one who already has it. And you stay there. You return to that feeling again and again until it becomes your default, until waking life feels no different from your prayer, until there is no more asking, only receiving, until there is no more waiting, only unfolding. You breathe, and it comes. You rest and it flows. You no longer try. You allow, because the state of the wish fulfilled does not force. It welcomes, and in that welcome the world bows, not to your ego, but to your alignment. This is the great reversal, where striving ends and allowing begins, where miracles are not surprises but natural outcomes, where you no longer wonder, will it come? You simply whisper, it is done. And with that, the next scene begins to rise. And so in the quiet unfolding of it is done, you begin to notice life is no longer something happening to you. It is something flowing from you. Every moment becomes an echo of the state you occupy. You are no longer at the mercy of appearances. You are not gauging progress by what your eyes see. Instead, you begin to feel, to really feel, that the world is mirroring the contents of your imagination. It's as if the outer world softens, less rigid, less fixed, and starts responding to your touch like warm clay. You no longer react. You create. This, Neville taught, is the divine mystery, that man's imagination is God, and that by imagining lovingly, you are acting in alignment with divine will. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5:48. What could this mean, except that you are invited to align your inner world with the perfection of creation, not in some distant future, but now. Now is the appointed time. not when the job arrives, not when the relationship appears, not when the health is restored, but now, in the unseen, in the felt reality, in the inner agreement with your higher self. To assume the wish fulfilled is to step outside of time. You collapse the delay by no longer entertaining the illusion that you're separate from your desire. You stop waiting to be happy and simply become the one who is. You stop asking when and begin saying thank you, as if it has already come. This is not denial. It's not ignoring what is. It is a sacred decision to prioritize what is real in the inner world, because the outer world must follow. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Feel that again. Faith is not a wish, it is substance. It is the ground beneath your feet as you walk in the invisible. It is evidence, real evidence, of things not yet seen with the eyes, but fully known by the heart. And you begin to walk differently. You carry yourself like someone who already holds the answer, not arrogantly, but peacefully. There is a weightlessness in your presence, a subtle joy, a gentle certainty. Others may ask, how can you be so calm? And you will smile, not out of secrecy, but because words cannot fully explain what the soul has claimed. You'll find that fewer explanations are needed. You no longer seek validation. You no longer feel urgency. Why? Because you've entered the state of the wish fulfilled, and it is a place of rest. Neville often reminded us that it is not about forcing the world to change, but about changing your concept of self. When you change your inner concept, everything else rearranges. You do not chase, you radiate. You do not plead, you allow, and life in its divine orchestration begins moving pieces you cannot see. Connections form, doors open, ideas arrive, seemingly from nowhere, but you know where they come from. You know now, you are not the puppet of circumstance. You are the author. Even your so-called limitations begin to dissolve. You stop repeating the story of I'm not ready, or I need to figure it all out first, because you begin to realize you already are what you seek to become, not in the outer sense, but in the eternal sense. You're just peeling away layers that covered the truth. And assumption is the great remover of delay. It is the tool that carves through illusion and reveals the finished sculpture within. This practice isn't reserved for the chosen few. It is for all who are willing to return inward and live from the end. And as you deepen your practice, you will catch yourself smiling for no reason at all, because within you, the harvest has already bloomed. And though the outer world may be catching up, you're no longer waiting. You are already there, already whole, already free, already fulfilled, and you simply live as if it were true, until it is. And even then you'll know it always was. There is a quiet revolution that takes place when one fully assumes the wish fulfilled. It's not loud. It doesn't come with trumpets or fanfare. It happens in the silence, in the stillness between thoughts, in the soft yielding of the heart to the unseen. It happens when you no longer try to believe, but simply rest in belief. And this is where the soul exhales. You no longer wrestle with doubt, because you have tasted the reality within. You no longer chase signs, because you have become the sign. Let the weak say I am strong. Joel 3:10. That simple verse reveals the key. The weak do not wait to feel strong. They claim the identity, and the strength follows. So too the one longing for love does not wait to be chosen. They become love. They breathe it. They radiate it. And the world has no choice but to echo it back. The sick do not wait for healing to feel whole. They step into the garment of wellness before the fever breaks, before the wound closes, before the test result changes. They clothe themselves in the outcome. Neville called this living in the end, and in this time becomes a servant, not a master. There's no more counting the days, no more asking how long. There is only presence. The end is now. The wish is fulfilled. You're no longer moving toward the dream. You're moving from it. This is not a technique to force results. It's a way of being that honors your divinity. I have said ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Psalm 82:6. To live from the end is to accept this sacred inheritance, not with arrogance but with reverence. You become the caretaker of a truth too large to measure, and so you carry it with gentleness, like light in your hands. Each morning before your feet touch the floor, you return to the state of the wish fulfilled. You don't check your phone for updates. You check your inner atmosphere. Are you still there? Are you still seeing the world through the eyes of the one who already has what they desire? And if not, you return, not through effort but through feeling. You lie still. You breathe softly. You imagine the scene that implies fulfillment. And as you feel the tones of reality shift within, you rise, not to seek, but to express. The outer actions flow from this state. They are no longer driven by lack or urgency. They become sacred echoes of the inner claim. You send the message because you're already chosen. You apply for the job because you already possess the confidence. You give, not to get, but because you have. And this is the subtle shift that changes everything. No more bargaining with the universe. No more pleading. No more timelines, countdowns, or strategies. You are anchored in fulfillment, and fulfillment by its very nature must reflect outward. What things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Not believe you will receive, not believe it's coming soon, but believe you have received. That is the law, and the law is not broken. It is simply misunderstood. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you enter alignment with that law, and the rest, like gravity, takes care of itself. So let yourself rest here, in the stillness of knowing. Let yourself feel what it means to walk this earth already blessed, already chosen, already home. Because in truth you are, you always were, and now you remember. And perhaps now, as you rest more deeply into the knowing, you begin to see that assuming the wish fulfilled is not merely a technique for obtaining something. It is a way of remembering who you are, a sacred return to the divine center within you. All striving ceases, all questioning quiets. The noise of needing fades into a soft hush, as you dwell in the fullness of already being. For what is there to chase when it's already yours? What is there to beg for when the Father has already given? Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. Luke 15:31. Not some of it, not what you earn through effort. All, the entire kingdom, the peace, the provision, the purpose. It is already within you, waiting for your recognition. And this recognition is not intellectual. It is felt. It arises not through logic, but through surrender, as you let go of appearances and lean into the deeper truth. This is why Neville urged us not to look to facts. Facts are the shadows. They are echoes of a previous state. To give them power is to keep reliving the past. Instead, you look inward. You close your eyes to the world and open them to the vision within. You create a scene, one rich with feeling, a moment that could only occur if your desire were already fulfilled. And you play it again and again, not with strain, but with delight. You savor the tone of voice, the softness of the smile, the weight of the ring, the scent of the room. You allow the scene to become real, so real that it imprints itself into your very being. And when you rise, you carry it with you, not as a memory, but as a present reality. You walk differently. You speak differently. You move through the world as the one who already has, not pretending, not hoping, being. And this is where the world begins to bend. Not because you forced it, but because it must. It cannot help but conform to the inner arrangement. The state you occupy dictates the reflection. According to your faith be it unto you. Matthew 9:29. Faith not in a distant God, but in the unseen reality you have dared to claim. This is not about positive thinking. It is not about visualizing harder. It is about dwelling, taking up residence in the state of your wish fulfilled until it becomes your new home. And when doubts arise, as they often do, you return. Not with anxiety, but with calm conviction. You remind yourself, this is already mine. It was mine the moment I accepted it within. And so the bridge of incidents unfolds. Events arrange themselves with quiet perfection. Delays are revealed as divine timing. Setbacks become part of the tapestry. You need not manipulate or chase. You simply follow the thread, guided not by fear, but by faith. For when you assume the wish fulfilled, you collapse the space between you and the outcome. You step out of time and into eternity, where all things are now, and in this sacred space miracles become normal. Manifestation becomes natural, and you become free. Free from waiting, free from wondering, free from doubt. You are no longer a seeker, you are a knower. You are no longer asking, you are receiving. And all of this begins with a single quiet assumption: it is done. It is done. And because it is done, you no longer reach forward with grasping hands. You rest back into the reality that already is. You exhale. And with that breath, the need dissolves. Desire no longer burns with urgency. It glows now, quiet, warm, content. You have entered the Sabbath. And what is the Sabbath truly, but the rest that comes after creation? And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And on the seventh day God ended his work, and he rested. Genesis 1:31-2. This is your inner rest. Not the rest of doing nothing, but the rest of knowing nothing more needs to be done. You don't try to make it happen. You don't watch the clock or the calendar. You simply abide. For the seed has been planted. The soil has been prepared. And now, Now it grows in silence. Even when nothing appears to be changing, even when the world presents the same faces, the same stories, you do not flinch, because within, something has shifted. Within, the state has changed, and that state will eventually call forth its likeness in the outer world. Whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. Matthew 21:22. Prayer is not the plea of the desperate, it is the silent song of the one who knows, the one who walks in faith, not faith in chance, but faith in law, faith in the eternal principle, that imagining creates reality. Neville once said, to be conscious of being wealthy while poor is to be rich. It is only when we are conscious of being poor that we are poor. This is not philosophy, this is creation. You wear the feeling of your wish fulfilled like a second skin. It moves with you, it breathes with you, it becomes inseparable from your identity. And when you truly wear it, there is no more room for doubt. Doubt is a visitor that cannot enter a home already occupied by faith. You don't need signs, you don't require validation, because the feeling is enough. The inner conviction becomes more real than the world you see with your eyes. And that is the key. The imagination must become the master, not the servant. Most let the outer world rule their inner state, responding to circumstances, reacting to results. But when you live from the wish fulfilled, you flip the script. You dictate what you will see, by first choosing what you will feel. And this is the divine gift, that you may choose. In any moment, regardless of facts, you can assume a new state, a new identity, a new story. And the world, like a mirror, must follow. It cannot help itself. It has no life of its own. It simply reflects you, not the version of you bound by fear, but the one you dare to be in silence. This is the great secret Neville shared. Change your conception of yourself, and you change the world in which you live. So do you long for healing? Then assume I am whole. Do you yearn for love? Then dwell in I am already loved. Do you seek abundance? Then rest in I am richly supplied. Let these be more than affirmations. Let them be your dwelling place. Close the door to the old identity. Refuse the temptation to peek back, to compare, to analyze. For the old man must die so the new man can rise. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. Transformation begins within, in the quiet chamber where imagination meets faith, where the seed of assumption is planted, and the harvest is certain. And when the world says, but I see no evidence, you smile, for you walk by faith, not by sight. And in your heart you already hold what others are still looking for. You already have it, and because of that you no longer need it to come. And that very release, that soft sacred surrender, is what allows it to appear with effortless grace. So you rest, not because you've given up, but because you've given in to truth, to the unseen order, to the sacred rhythm of creation that needs no coaxing. It is in this surrender that power is born. You let the inner scene play quietly beneath your waking thoughts, like a melody that hums in the background of your being, guiding your steps without effort, carving invisible paths toward the inevitable. And if fear rises, because it often does, you do not fight it. You do not shout it down. You look at it calmly, gently, and say, you do not belong to me. Then you return, not to effort, not to striving, but to the feeling. You return home. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. John 14:1. Believe in your imagination. Believe in the self that already is. Believe in the unseen structure, that when you feel as though it's done, the bridge of incidents begins to form. It may not be linear, it may not be clear, but it will come, because it must. You are not creating out of thin air. You are selecting from the infinite. Neville taught that every state already exists, every possibility already alive. Creation is finished. You're not forcing something into being. You're choosing what you accept as real, what you claim within. The outer world is simply echo, shadow, reflection. But the real movement happens in silence, in stillness, when you dare to accept that the dream is no longer a dream. It is life. It is now. And this is where time begins to collapse. You're no longer waiting in hope. You're living in the end. And because you live in the end, time serves you. Events rearrange. People shift. Paths open. Without strain. Without control. It's as if the world begins to conspire on your behalf, because you've given it no other choice. To assume the wish fulfilled is to walk with the calm assurance that every moment is unfolding perfectly. Even when the surface seems slow or still, you do not demand. You do not rush. You trust. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Psalm 37:5. And what is the Lord? It is your imagination. It is the I am within you, the one who imagined the world into being, and now waits for you to imagine your world with the same reverence. So you begin to speak differently, not in the language of absence, but in the language of fulfillment. You no longer say, I hope it comes. You say it's done. You no longer say I need it. You say I am it. And in that shift, from hope to embodiment, you discover the secret key that unlocks everything. The dream no longer floats in the distance. It stands with you now. It eats with you. It walks beside you. It waits for you each morning in the stillness of the waking mind, ready to be welcomed once again. You close your eyes, not to escape, but to return to the garden where the vision was first born, where you touched it, felt it, became one with it. And then you walk through your day with the quiet confidence of the one who knows it is not coming, it is here. And because it is here, you are free, free from effort, free from urgency, free from needing to prove anything to anyone. You are no longer the seeker, you are the one who has found, and you live your life from that finding, with grace, with ease, with peace, that passes all understanding. And when you carry this quiet knowing into each moment, you find that life begins to mirror your inner stillness, not in loud ways, not in fireworks, but in gentle confirmations. A word spoken at the right time, a number that appears again and again, an unexpected call, a door that opens without you knocking. You realize then you are no longer chasing signs, you are becoming the sign. Your presence, your inner conviction, that is the signal that the invisible has taken form. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Substance, evidence, not hope, not wishful thinking, but substance that lives within the feeling, the embodiment of your wish fulfilled. And what is this embodiment really? It is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream with certainty. Instead, it whispers. It whispers in the way your shoulders soften, in the way your breath slows, in the way your mind releases the grip on how and when, because those questions no longer concern you. You have entered a new state, a new identity, and that state does not question its reality. It simply is. You are no longer the one who waits for permission to dream. You are the one who lives the dream in silence and lets the outer world catch up. There is a sacred art to this kind of living, this dwelling in the unseen, this walking with invisible treasures in your heart. You begin to realize others may see only a smile on your face, but within you palaces have already risen, fields have bloomed, lives have changed, and all without lifting a finger, except to rearrange the furniture of your imagination. Neville would say, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So then why not persist in the lovely? Why not cling to the noble and the good? Why not dare to imagine the highest, and then rest in that place as if it were already so? And when doubt rises, because it will, you don't argue with it. You don't wrestle it to the ground. You simply return to the inner vision, to the state you claimed as yours, to the end. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. That stillness is your anchor, that knowing your power, because in that stillness you realize that you were never separate from your desires. You were never separate from your answered prayer. You were simply being asked to align, to accept, to inhabit the version of yourself who already knows it is done. This is not about forcing a smile. This is not about pretending. This is about dwelling in the house already built, eating the fruit already ripened, living the life already created in the imagination of God within you. And when you wake each day, you return to it again. You rest in it, you walk in it, you bless it, not with noise, not with shouting, but with the sacred hush of belief. This is where miracles are born, not in striving, but in surrender, not in grasping, but in grace. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to convince the world. Your only task is to assume, and in that assumption remain faithful. Faithful in feeling, faithful in tone, faithful in the invisible, knowing that I am what I long to be. And in that fidelity to the unseen, to the imagined, to the felt reality of the end, life bends, time collapses, reality yields, not because you've earned it, but because you've become it. And so we arrive not at an ending, but at a return to the stillness that has always been home, because the secret was never far. It lived in the chambers of your own being, waiting patiently, like a flame behind a curtain, quiet, constant, unwavering. To assume the wish fulfilled is not merely to visualize or pretend. It is to become, to wear the state like a garment, to let it press gently against your skin until the line between you and it dissolves. Let the weak say, I am strong. Joel 3:10. This is not delusion. This is scripture. This is divine instruction. Let the barren say, I am fruitful. Let the overlooked say, I am chosen. Let the wanderer say, I am home. Not tomorrow, not if things change, but now. Now is the appointed hour. Now is the seed of everything. And in your now you carry eternity. You do not need more proof. You do not need the world's confirmation before you dare to believe. Faith is its own evidence. It is the proof of unseen things. It is the quiet insistence that reality is shaped not by circumstance but by assumption. And what a mercy that is, because assumption is yours to control, imagination is yours to direct, and the state you choose to dwell in, that becomes your world. The mind may wander, the senses may argue, but you return again and again to the end, to that sacred scene where all is well, where the desire has bloomed, where the harvest is already gathered, and your soul whispers, yes, this is it. There is nothing to force, nothing to chase, just a daily devotional return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This is not something you strain to maintain. It is something you rest into, like floating in water after you've let go of the need to swim. You allow it to carry you, and in that allowance you begin to witness a rearranging of things. What once felt impossible starts to soften around the edges. What once seemed far starts to pull near, almost as if it had been there all along, just waiting for you to recognize it. Call those things which be not as though they were. Romans 4:17. This is the divine technique. This is the method hidden in plain sight. You call the unseen into form not by effort, but by embodiment, by occupying the state with such sincerity, such calm reverence, that the world around you has no choice but to conform. Let your days be filled with this quiet art. Wake not into worry, but into wonder. Lie down not in fear, but in fulfillment. Let the final thoughts before sleep be drenched in the fragrance of your answered prayer. Let your pillow remember the feel of peace. Let your dreams echo with completion. Let your breath align with the rhythm of it is done. And if ever you forget, for we all do, you need not scold yourself. Just return, softly, lovingly, without drama. Return to the end. For you are the operant power. You are the creator clothed in form. You are the echo of I am made flesh. And when you know this, not just with your mind but with your whole being, the world yields, time bends, and what was once a distant hope becomes your daily bread. The wish once longed for becomes the life you wake into. This is the power you've always had. This is the secret Neville wanted you to remember. And now you do. So sleep, dear one. Not as someone waiting, but as someone who already had. Sleep in peace, as the fulfilled, as the chosen, as the one who dared to believe. It is done. Amen.